Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on Rotterdam Convention databases and tools. My name is Javier Bonilla, and I support the Rotterdam Convention Secretariat, delivering workshops and updating databases. And today I will be moderating this webinar. Now I'm seeing here in the chat that we have participants from Latin America and Caribbean, Asia, Africa, Europe, and Near East regions. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for taking the time to participate this activity. And here we see the advantage of technology, so how we can meet on one time in different regions. And before we start, I will invite my colleague Alexander Michalowski to do the opening remarks. Alec, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javier. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all the participants, and a very warm welcome to this webinar on the Rotterdam Convention databases and tools. It is a pleasure to welcome so many designated national authorities joining us from different parties, basically from all peak regions of the convention. My name is Alexander Mihailovsky. I'm an agricultural officer in the FAO's Rome site of the Rotterdam Convention Secretariat. And on behalf of the Secretariat, I would like to thank you for your participation and the continued efforts and engagement in the implementation of the Convention. As authorities, you play a central role in ensuring the effective operation of the Convention at national level, particularly through the preparations and submissions of import responses and notifications of final regulatory actions. Today's webinar takes place within the framework of Clearinghouse Mechanism, which forms part of the joint information exchange platform of the three conventions, basically Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. The CHM, or the Clearinghouse Mechanism, was established to facilitate the exchange of information, technical resources and expertise, and to support you, the parties, in meeting the obligations under the Convention through access to reliable, up-to-date, and user-friendly digital systems. In line with the program of work and budget for the biennium 26-27, which was approved by the conference of the parties, the Secretariat continues to maintain and enhance the clearinghouse mechanism and its associated information tools that you will hear about. These efforts are aimed at ensuring that parties, and in particular the DNAs, have access to accurate data, clear guidance, and practical digital resources that can support the national decision-making and reporting. Within this context, the Secretariat maintains and further develops several key databases and tools related to the core obligations of the Convention, including those that are supporting the submission of import responses under Article 10 and final regulatory action notifications under Article 5. Strengthening the familiarity with these tools is essential not only for timely and accurate submissions, but also for improving overall data quality and transparency and information exchange across parties. The objective of today's session is to provide you with a practical and structured overview of the Rotterdam Convention databases and its digital platforms, which information they contain, how they're interconnected, and how they can be effectively used to support your work as DNAs. This webinar will also demonstrate how these tools can serve as decision support resources at the national level beyond their reporting function. We strongly encourage your active participation throughout the session. Please make use of the question and answer segment to raise any issues of share, the experiences that you have, and we kindly ask you to complete the feedback questionnaire at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is essential in helping the Secretariat to further improve the clearinghouse mechanism and to tailor future support to your needs as designated national authorities. Thank you very much, and I hand over back to Javier as facilitator of this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alec. And let me start with some simple questions. So, do you know the status of implementation of the Rotterdam Convention in your country? Or how to quickly check if your country has already submitted final regulatory action notifications or import responses for pesticides and industrial chemicals? And more importantly, are you using the online submission platform to submit your national decisions? If the answer is no, or maybe not always, you are not alone. You are not alone. Today's session is designed exactly for that. And now I will proceed here with the agenda. So we will have 1 hour and 50 minutes. The session will begin with an overview of the Rotterdam Convention and its key obligations under Article 5 and 10, namely final regulatory action notifications and import responses, which are captured and made available as data to our databases. Then we will walk through the databases and tools of the convention, and most importantly, how to use them in practice to check and submit import responses, notify final regulatory actions, and support your daily work as designated national authorities. So we will have the final regulatory action notification database where you can explore which pesticides and industrial chemicals have been banned or restricted by some of the 167 parties of the convention, along with the health and environmental reasons. Then we have the import response databases where you can find the decisions of each party to the Rotterdam Convention for the 57 chemicals listed in Annex 3, indicating if they consent or no consent of import of those chemicals. We will have also the hand-in-hand FAO platform that displays those previous databases, the FRA and import response, in an interactive way. So it means in a map, so you can compare data and carry out basic analysis. Next, we will present our last tool, and this is very important, the online submission platform of FRS and import responses, where you can submit, as the name said, the FRS and import responses of your country in a very easy way. And last but not least, we have those four tools. Is the data visualization tool where you can get numbers of parties that join the convention, list of chemicals that are in the Annex 3, notifications through the GRs. Also the workshop and webinar library when you can extract recordings of previous webinars or workshops, also reports on it. Country contacts to check which represent your country, who is the designated national authority and official contact point. And last but not least, the resource kit when you can get publications, e-learning courses, guidance materials that can help you to implement the convention. And after those presentations, we'll move to the Q&A session to address your questions. And we will then close up with a short questionnaire to better understand your needs and see how we can support you moving forward with implementation of the convention. Also, you are invited to write on the chat box if you have questions. Also, there is a Q&A icon. You have questions, and at the end also we have this session. Okay, so let's start now. Our first speaker is gonna be my colleague, Alexander Michalowski, Agricultural Officer of the Rotterdam Convention Secretariat. And Alec oversees the elaboration of the PIC circular, a key document in the implementation of the convention, both for the operation of the PIC procedure and the mechanism for exchange of information on hazardous chemicals. And this publication is published every 6 months in 12 June and 12 December in English, French, and Spanish. And it's the same data that we will have in our databases. And It contains the last import responses and FRA's final regulatory action notifications presented by countries. So now I would like to invite him to deliver his presentation on the overview of the Rotterdam Convention and its key obligations. Alec, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javier, for this great introduction and setting the scene for the webinar. We have as participants designated national authorities, and we expect that you will be familiar with the information that I will provide you in the next couple of slides, basically providing an overview of the Rotterdam Convention and its key provisions. Firstly, on what is the Rotterdam Convention, you all know that it's a formal agreement between the countries under the UN auspices, which promotes shared responsibility in the international trade of hazardous chemicals and pesticides. It was adopted and signed during a conference to which more than 170 countries participated, which was held in Rotterdam back in 1998. And then it entered into force on 24th of February 2004 when 51 signatories were collected and notified the convention to become a legally binding instrument for all the parties that joined up until then and that ratified the convention and joined the convention afterwards. As of today, we are end of March, beginning of April 2026. We have 168 parties that have joined the convention. In terms of what is the main objective of the Rotterdam Convention, is you can move to the next slide, Javier. It's to promote shared responsibility and cooperative efforts among parties in the international trade of certain hazardous chemicals in order to promote protection of human health and the environment from potential harm and to contribute to the environmental and sound use of those hazardous chemicals. And how this is done, there are three elements that are mentioned in the objective, which is set out in Article 1 of the Convention text. And that is basically by facilitating the information exchange about the characteristics of these hazardous chemicals, by providing for a national decision-making process on their import and export, and by disseminating or sharing the decision made by parties, all the parties of the convention globally, via the tools that basically you will hear later on. So we always say that there are two main aspects or two main mechanisms under the convention, or two main provisions. The first one is the PIC procedure or the prior informed consent procedure, which relates to Annex 3 chemicals or chemicals that have been listed under the Convention Annex 3. It's basically a mechanism which formally obtains and disseminates the decisions of importing parties as to whether they wish to receive future shipments of the Annex listed chemicals or not. And it also ensures that exporting parties ensuring exporters within their jurisdictions comply with these decisions. Also, the PIC procedure ensures that the Annex 3 chemicals are only exported to parties that have agreed to receive them. This is very important to be remembered and underlined. And then information exchange concept is intertwined through basically all the articles of the conventions, and all the main provisions or obligations of the conventions are all the convention about information exchange. which is mentioned in Article 14. However, it refers mainly to the notifications of final regulatory action or submission notifications of final regulatory action on submission of proposals to list severely hazardous pesticide formulations into the Annex 3, submission of import responses in line with Article 10, submission of export notifications in line with Article 12, then information that is supposed to accompany exported chemicals, and information exchange mechanism is properly explained, and you can dive into it if you go through Article 14 in detail. So now let me just remind you on what are FRAs. Those are the means by which parties inform the Secretariat and the other parties of their nationally undertaken actions to ban or severely restrict a chemical because of human health and or environmental reasons or concerns. And Article 5 stipulates that basically each party has the obligation, whenever such an action is undertaken, to submit a notification to the Secretariat within 90 days after this action has taken effect. This is facilitated through the FRA notification form that the Secretariat has developed and that the parties are using to submit the information based on the Annex 1 information requirements. Then the next slide basically is in relation to Article 6, which sets out the chances for the parties to submit proposals to list severely hazardous pesticide formulations. This is not an obligation, but this is a chance for developing countries or countries with an economy in transitions that are experiencing problems caused by severely hazardous pesticide formulations under the conditions of use in its territory, to submit and to propose the Secretariat listing of these SHPFs in Annex 3 in line with Annex 4, Part 1 information requirements. In terms of, next slide, please. Here you can see a depicted diagram on how the process works and how the responsibilities are being divided between the party, Secretariat, and the subsidiary bodies of the convention, including the decision-making body of the convention, in terms of how the process is run when a party responds to its obligations, namely to submit notifications and proposals to the Secretariat. The Secretariat is first verifying these notifications according to Annex 1 information requirements, or Annex 4 Part 1, if you're talking about SHPFs. Then the information is published in the respective databases in the website and in the big circular that is published biannually. When the Secretariat receives 2 or more FRS notifications for the same chemical, which is coming from different parties from at least 2 different peak regions, which are in line with Annex 1 information requirements, or when an SHPF proposal is submitted by a developing party which is meeting Annex 4, Part 1, then the Secretariat forwards that notification or proposal to the Chemical Review Committee for its subsequent review in line with Annex 2 criteria. And if those criteria are found to be met by the committee, basically CRC is recommending listing and inclusion in Annex 3, working on the preparation of the DGD. Then this recommendation is forwarded to the conference of the parties, where this decision-making body of the convention. Basically, the parties are deciding by consensus if they will allow listing of the chemical into the Annex 3. If that's the case, the parties are obliged, and if the chemical is listed into the Annex 3, then the parties are obliged to submit import responses in line with Article 10 of the Convention and the PIC procedure of the Convention that I already talked about before. And the Secretariat has the responsibility to share and to communicate these import responses to all the parties through various means, namely the PIC circular, website databases, and the tools that are you're gonna hear later on. So the last slide that I want to mention is basically in relation to the import responses and Article 10. You know that we have listed so far, or you have listed so far 57 chemicals into the Annex 3. 38 are pesticides, 18 are industrial chemicals, and there is one chemical in both categories, both pesticide and industrial chemicals, in the name of tributyltin compounds. The process is facilitated through the submission of information to so-called import responses form, which basically can reflect on your desire to receive future shipment or not of the respectively listed chemical into the Annex 3. So therefore, the decision can be a final or an interim decision. And in both cases, it can be consent to import, no consent to import, or consent to import under specified or subject to specified conditions. The difference is that if we're talking about a final decision, there should be an existing legislative or administrative measures or decision undertaken in the country, and an interim decision does not have such a requirement, and this part of the requirement of Article 10 is left aside, and you can provide an interim decision with the same basically significance in terms of being respected by the parties as an interim decision, both consent to import, no consent to import, and consent to import subject to specified conditions. So with this short overview, I hand it back to Javier to hear more about the real matter of today's webinar, and that is presentation on the RC databases and tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alec, for giving us an overview of the convention and also to do emphasis, that the FRA notifications and the import responses are key obligations of the convention, and those are data that we have in our website. So now we are gonna present the overview of the database and tools, and those databases allows you to check the status of implementation in your country. So how many import responses and FRA notifications have you submitted? While the online platform of online submissions allows you, as the name says, submit those FRA notifications and missing import responses. And a part of those four databases and tools, we have we are gonna also show where to get guidance materials, webinar recordings, some e-learning courses that I recommend to take them, and information of our activities. So the first database is the final regulatory action and database. This database provides detailed information on FRA notifications for pesticides and industrial chemicals that have been banned or severely restricted by parties of the convention. It also includes the reasons for these actions, if they are related to human health and or environmental concerns, as well as information on any risk evaluation that support those decisions. So we are gonna open the link right now. And if we go to the page of the Rotterdam Convention, you are also welcome to check the news, our activities, upcoming meetings. But now coming to our webinar to get access to to the database of final regulatory action, we first go to procedures, then to notification of final regulatory actions, and then on the left column we have here a database of notifications. And basically, this database is divided in 4 columns. The first one is the recently issued. It means the notifications that were published in our last publication of PIC Circular. It was in December 2025. We received one, two, three. We received 8 notifications for different countries. We have here Kenya, Chile, Serbia, and Australia. Different chemicals and also different categories. So we receive pesticides and industrial chemicals. And the last column is the final regulatory action. If this pesticide or industrial chemical was banned or severely restricted. And in the last column, the year of publication. And if we click here in the eye, where you can see the laser, we can get more information about the FRA notification. We can get information about the chemical name, the chemical abstract security number, when it was published, the date of entry into force, the final regulatory action, the category. Here you have industrial for lead chromates. The final regulatory action, in this case, was severely restricted. It was not banned, so there is some uses that the country allows. Also, we have here, if the final regulatory action was based on risk evaluation, in this case, is yes. And also, most important thing, the reasons. In this case, say that is human health. And here we can have a summary of that information and why it was taken. So I invite you to explore and also to check the PIC circular. Then, if we go to the next column, is by party. It means that here it's very important that you type your country to check how many final regulatory action notifications your country has submitted. If I type, for instance, Colombia, I can check they have submitted 4 FRA notifications. And same, if I check here in the eye, I can get details on it. We have here methyl bromide, a pesticide, was restricted. We can get information about the uses that remain allowed because it's a restriction. It was based in risk evaluation or no. Say yes. Also the summary of that decision and the reasons. In this case was human health and environment. So here I invite you to check in the status of your country on final regulatory action notifications. And we are gonna share right now on the chat this presentation so you can have easy access to those databases. And then we have here another in the column the non-annex 3 chemicals. Similar, so you can check in each eye what is the information of that and final regulatory notification. And if you want more information, you can click here on extended to know what are the properties, the chemical properties. So we have physicochemical properties, toxicological properties, and ecotoxicological properties of the chemical. Okay, this is for the database on notifications of final regulatory action. And then we will pass to the database of import responses. So here we go to procedures again, then import responses. On the left column, we have database on import responses. And here you can find the decisions of each party of the convention in relation to the import of chemicals listed in Annex 3 of the convention. So that now are 57 chemicals, 19 industrial chemicals, 37 pesticides, and one chemical in both categories. So here you will see if some party consent, non-consent, or consent under certain conditions the import of those chemicals that are listed in Annex 3. And in the case of those parties that have taken final decision, you will find the decree or law that support the decision. Here, in this database, we have 4 columns. The first one is recently transmitted. It means that they were published in the last peak circular, also as the FRAs. And here, if we click in the name of the chemical, we can get information of the law or decree was taken to take that decision. For instance, here we have alachlor, uh, which is a pesticide. It was submitted by Belarus. The response was final decision. It means that there is a decree that support the decision. If it will be interim, it means that there is no decree that sustain the decision. And then the decision, they not consent to import alachlor and the GR of publication. And then by party, as I said before, in the final regulatory action notifications, you can check your country. And here, as example, let's go for Australia. We can check the number of total import responses submitted at the end, and then the list of import responses submitted. Um, we have here different decisions. For instance, consent to import only subject specific conditions, or we have not consent to import. So if we check, for instance, alachlor, we can notice what are the conditions for import of that chemical. So basically, they require approval of registration to use that chemical, and they also mention the institutions, no, that require those registrations. Then if we go by chemical, we can go by each of the chemicals that are listed in the Annex 3. And here at the end, case of failure to submit responses, you can check the missing import responses. So as I said before, there are 57 import responses. Is some country are missing 10? You go by country and you check how many in your country are missing. Okay, so this is for the database of import responses and database of final regulatory action notifications. And last year we developed a tool that uh, link those two databases and allows to check data in an interactive way. So this tool is the FAO Hand Enhanced platform, and I'm gonna open from here. So if we go to implementation, then resource kit, we go general and open here the tool. Takes 30 seconds. Okay, in this tool, we find data related with crops, food, but for our case, we go to crops and vegetation, then to hazardous chemicals and pesticides, And then we have the two, let's say, databases that we use before the import responses and the final regulatory notifications. If we add here import responses, in this map will appear by default the first chemical that we have in the Annex 3, which is 2,4,5-T and salts and esters for all the countries. And the countries that are highlighted in red means that they take a final decision. And those ones that are in blue, it means that they took an interim decision. So if we click, for instance, here in Brazil, we can check that Brazil took a final decision to no consent to import. If we click to other country, for instance, see Pakistan, if I'm not wrong, is this one. We can check that Pakistan took an interim decision to no consent to import. Interim means that there is not a decree behind this decision. And final means that there is a decree that sustains the decision. And if we change and do another example, let's go with DDT, and we delete the previous chemical. Mm, okay, the same in red, we can check the countries that took final decision and the blue interim decision. But those countries are those ones that, 1 second, that not consent to import. But if we go here to the tool on the left, we can check also those ones that consent to import only subject to specific conditions. So for instance, here mm, we have Bolivia that consent the import of DDT under certain conditions, and it's a final decision. We have Mexico that also consent the import sustained under certain conditions, but it's an interim decision, so there is no decree or law. And then we have South Africa also. That's a final decision, consent to import under certain conditions. And this is the part of import responses. And we wanna check the part of FRAs. We go here to explore data. We remove the import response database, and then we add the notifications final regulatory action. And here, by default, we have the first country or the first party of the convention, which is Armenia. Then the chemicals, here we put all the chemicals. So if we click in Armenia, second, we have the list of FRA notifications that they submitted, and also they were banned or restricted. We have here the list, and here the final regulatory action. So, for instance, we want to check another country. We go, for instance, to Brazil. Brazil will appear on the map. We click on Brazil, and the same. We're gonna see the list of all the chemicals that they submitted to the Secretariat, notifications, and also the final regulatory actions. Okay, and now I'm gonna give another example with a chemical, and I'm gonna put here all the countries because now we are gonna do an analysis with the chemical. Let's say paraquat, and paraquat dichloride. Okay, so in the map, we're gonna see the countries that ban and restricted paraquat. For instance, here Brazil, they ban paraquat. South Africa also restricted paraquat Turkey, we have also here that Bank Paraguay and other countries. So here I invite you to use this tool to check how is the status in your country. Also, you do some analysis, compare with other countries. And with the link I send here in this chat, you can have easy access to it if you get lost in the web page. So now I come back to the slides, and here I'm pleased to introduce a new user-friendly tool, the online submission platform for import responses and final regulatory actions. And this platform is designed to facilitate the electronic submission of FRA notifications and import responses, making the process more efficient and accessible for parties. So I'm gonna give the floor to my colleague Jean-Philippe. He's part of the Rotterdam Convention Secretariat in UNEP, Geneva, and he supports the elaboration of the PIC circular and updating the databases and tools for Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention. So, Jean-Philippe, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Javier and Alec, for this great presentation. And to all the attendees, it's very nice to see so many names that are familiar through communications and submissions we received. So, yes, as Javier mentioned, I will present briefly the online submission platform that we have developed and highlight the great things it has to facilitate your duties in implementing the Rotterdam Convention. So first I will share my screen. Um, okay, let's make sure everything, I will check with you, Javier. Is the screen being shown?
Yeah, perfect. I can see the screen. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so for this presentation, I won't gonna use the demo mode, which is essentially an exact replica of the actual tool. Just before I start, the credentials can be requested through the secretariat and via an email, and then I would send it to corresponding DNAs. Each DNA has its own credentials, username, and password. So please do if you are in need of these credentials to access. So first, I pick in the demo account for Switzerland since it's where I'm located. So I thought it was convenient. So once you access using your credentials, you will see two main fields or directions you can take. Is either go through the final regulatory action notification or through the import country response, also known as IR. I'm going to start for simplicity with the IRs, and then we're going to jump into the FRA, which is typically a more complex form. So if we go to import country responses, the first thing you're going to see is a table of import responses and basically chemicals. So here you should find a list of all 57 chemicals that are currently listed on Annex 3. And then if in the case you have submitted import responses in the past, you're going to see the type of response, the decision on those responses, the date, or basically the date of the PIC circular where that import response was published by us, by the Secretariat. And then you're going to see an action button on the extreme right. You're going to see whether it was published. You're going to see the chance to submit new in the case you haven't submitted. Or if it's a work in progress, you're going to see something, a message on a different color. Basically, it's that you have started creating the import response and you saved the progress, but you haven't hit submit yet. Okay. So in this case, we're going to jump to one of our latest chemicals that have been listed, carbosulfan, and we're going to click submit new. Okay. Here, the first thing you're going to encounter is whether one of the three languages, the most common languages, English, French, and Spanish, that we have on our Rotterdam Convention website and platforms, And then you can pick any of the language that will immediately translate the content of the form. So if we stick with English, then you're going to see a pre-populated field, in this case, the common name, since this is defined by the listing of the chemical. So there is not much to change there. Same for the chemical abstract number, okay, or identifier. You're going to see that already there. That, believe it or not, reduce some complexity, since in some cases we receive forms that have a typo on the name or a typo on the number, and then it prompts us to request a correction. So in this case, those fields are pre-populated as well as the category for the listing on Annex 3. So then you have this different sections, same as you will have on the regular form. You will have section 2 that would allow you to specify if it's a first-time import response for your party, or if it's a modification of a previous response. Here you can pick either one of them. Then you're going to have section 3. Here you have your first decision is whether your actual response is a final decision or an interim decision with the implication it has. So if we pick the final decision, you're going to have section 4 open, which is going to immediately give you the option to not consent to import, or consent under or subject to specified conditions. And you're going to have the very important field 4.4 to put the information about the legislative or administrative measure that supports the decision you are selecting, okay? In the cases of picking non-consent or consent or only subject to specified conditions, once you click, you will have two very important questions regarding trade neutrality that are going to be open and offered to you, where you can select the appropriate option. Okay, here I'm going to show you. You have also those two questions prompting if you consent the specified conditions option. Here, also you will have an open text box to specify those conditions. Okay, here you want to be as clear as possible on to what procedure or measure is necessary to fulfill those specified conditions. Okay, as you can see here on this text box, you have the option to format your text. You have a very important subscript. Every time you're dealing with chemicals, this is a very important button to have. You have the option to hyperlink, and you have the options to put your text and specify the different languages. Okay. Okay, let's assume your decision is not final but interim. Here, if you pick this, section 4 is not available anymore, and section 5 will become available with a few more questions to answer, or options to answer. This is very important because typically in the regular form, you have available to you straight from the beginning, section 4 and 5, and that sometimes leads to confusion in which one to answer. Okay, so in this case, the form would only make available what is the relevant one. So here you have the three options or three decisions possible, same as with section 4. But you're going to have a few other questions in the, where you can indicate whether you are pursuing a final decision. This can be yes or no. And you have three questions where you can give feedback to the Secretariat in terms of need for assistance. Okay, this is very important as well. We take this information and then reach out to the relevant parties, trying to respond to your request and coordinate assistance to help you out fulfill the requirements of the convention. So here you have the possibility to put that information. And then it comes section 6, which is also for relevant additional information. It would initially give you two questions, whether the chemical is registered in the country, if the chemical is manufactured in the country, and depending on your answers, if you pick any of those two as a yes, you will get two follow-up questions if the chemical is intended for domestic use or if it's intended for export as well. So here you can pick whatever answer is relevant. And you have a little space to book final remarks here also, another opportunity to give feedback to the Secretariat. Here, another important feature of this tool is that it has your information pre-populated. Not that is a particular challenge there, but the use of the online platform will allow you to not go and have a signature and a seal and then forward that to us as it happened in the past, or even through the permanent mission in Geneva or through FAO. So this will take this step and simplify the procedure, okay, and the processing. So that's for the IRs. Well, at the end, once you put all the information, you will have these three buttons. You have the save. If you want to save the progress, I always encourage you to do that. And then if everything is done, to submit to the Secretariat. Once that's done, or to any of the records there, once they have been saved at least one time, you can go and print the form for your records. Also, a last addition was done here. You can, for example, clear the entire answer. Let's assume you pick some answers and then you quickly realize that it was not intended, okay? For example, here, especially here where you want to clear, for example, here and have nothing, we have added this button that will completely clear. Oh, this is in section 4. I'm clicking the wrong one, sorry. Okay, we'll completely clear it out and then you can proceed to answer. Okay, if we go back to the list, and this is a question that came recently from one of our DNAs, is if you want to resubmit a new response. Well, if we do that, you go through the one that is published, you will get two options, either to restart from a blank or to start with a copy of the existing one. Okay, for IRs, I typically recommend to go from blank, so you don't carry previous responses unless you are sure you want to do that. So if you go to blank, you will have started from the beginning, you will have the identity pre-populated, and then you have a complete blank form with your information already there to select and pick the answers that are more convenient for your party situation. Okay. If you go for the copy, you're going to have the answers that are on the existing IR, and then you can modify using the buttons that I show you. You can clear out certain fields and input new responses. Okay. Okay, now we can go to the FRA. As I mentioned, the FRA is a more complex form with many fields. I just pick an example just to show you how it can be filled. But here you're going to see a tab on the right, and that's going to show you if your party has submitted FRAs in the past, you're going to get similar to what you get from the FRA database. You're going to get a list of FRAs that are being published, either from not Annex 3 chemicals or Annex 3. So you can see exactly right there what have been submitted by you or your predecessors in the role of DNAs. So if we decide to go through a new one, then you're going to have the entire form open. Here, notice there is no pre-population beside your information as DNA, obviously, because here we are not restricted to chemicals that have been listed to Annex 3. So here, any chemical or any group of chemicals can be listed here or be filling this form. Okay, so I pick a chemical as an example just to show you. It's a very simple, a lot of text boxes, some with many options that I'm going to mention in a second. But here I pick one chemical, acetic acid, main component of vinegar. So I will just try to pre-populate things. For example, the common name, I'll put acetic acid. Then if we go to the IUPAC name, we can put widely accepted IUPAC name for this chemical. Then if we have some trade chemicals or different variations of it, I also pick some examples, glacial acetic acid, vinegar acid, or less commonly used chemical name, methane carboxylic acid. For code and numbers, we have several. We have the harmonized system. We have the most typically used and widely known CAS number or CAS number. So here we can have all this information pre-populating. Remember, here you want to be specific. You want to have as many identifiers as you can. So we have that on record from your submission. If we go to the end of this form, after we put the identifiers we have at hand, we have a very important section to indicate if this is a first-time final regulatory action for this chemical from your party, if it's coming or replacing an existing FRA, which happens sometimes, and then you can put the date if that's the case. Okay, then it comes the heavy part or the very important part of this final regulatory action. You want to specify if the chemical is being banned or was banned or restricted in your country. Here we're going to put restricted because we don't want to deprive ourselves of vinegar and its properties. And then you can put a very important summary of the final regulatory action. Okay, here I prepare something just for its sake. Here, since this is the first text box, see that you have many formatting options here, but you also have the possibility of inserting an image or even more inserting a document, okay? Here, I don't know why I probably was using Botswana for an example, but here you can go browse your computer and attach or upload any relevant documents, okay? Here we have a very important field, the date of entry into force of the final regulatory action, which is very important. And then you have the several others. Here we have in blue a very important one, or actually 2.32 and 2.33, which is basically you want to specify. In this case, we're going to use industrial as the category for which it is, and then we can put the uses that are prohibited or the uses that remain allowed. And here I'm almost done with the example. I'm going to put, okay, we can prohibit certain uses and we can allow some very important uses for this chemical. Okay, then the form continues. You're going to have very important fields to fulfill regarding if it's a risk, if it's the decision or the regulatory action is based on a risk or hazard evaluation. Okay, these are very important fields for review by the Chemical Review Committee. Whether the decision is relevant to the environment or human health. Then you have other sections where you can put properties of the chemicals. Okay, once again, here you can copy and paste tables or you can put basically in any format. Here we're going to put molecular or physical chemical properties of this chemical. We're going to put a few. Here you have, it's handling well the chemical formulas here. In any case, if you copy, you're going to have the ability to format it properly. So without taking much more time and lead to the end of the presentation and questions if you have, then you can go to the final section where you have your credentials and you will see the opportunity to save your progress, submit to the secretariat if you're done, and also print a copy of the submission for your record. Okay, and with this, I again thank you for your attention and you know put ourselves as secretariat to your disposition in any case of assistance you need with this tool or any other. Okay, and thank you, Javier and Alec.
Thank you so much, Jean-Philippe, for your presentation, and also to give a summary. The databases that I present for check the status of the implementation of the convention, and then the tool that Jean-Philippe explained is how you can take action and submit input responses and FRA notifications. And in the last part of the webinar, I want to briefly mention other tools, databases that you can extract information about our activities, guidances, also to check who is the DNA of your country. And here we have the country contacts databases, the workshops and library webinar library, the resource kit, and the visualization tool. If we go to country contacts briefly, we are gonna have a map when you can check who is the DNA, the designated national authority and focal point of your country. If I click Bolivia, I can get, for instance, all information and contact details of the authority that can take action and submit input responses or final regulatory action notifications. And then we have the resource kit. Here we can find some databases, some tools, important publications addressing gender issues in pesticide management, pesticides and environmental incidents, pesticides use, pesticide trade, and pesticide indicators. We have also guidances. There is one important here, which is the guidance to designate national authorities on the operation of the Rotterdam Convention, um, toolkits like the FAO pesticide registration toolkit that help the registers of each country to have a way to register those chemicals, and case of studies of the implementation of the convention, different guidances. And here, very important, e-learning course that was developed and published last year. So I recommend you to take this course if you want to learn the basics of the convention. And then reference, we have the International Code of Conduct of Pesticide Management. And yes, there is a lot of information, so we invite you to check the website and the link that I sent to you, a presentation, so you can fastly have a link with direct access. Then we have the workshop library, when you can check all our activities. And if I open one, for instance, that I collaborate, let me check. This regional workshop on environmental risk assessment for pesticides to support Rotterdam Convention implementation in Mexico last year. We can check the details, highlights, organizes, key outcomes of the workshop, target audience, and also get the report. And also we have the webinar library, where you can extract the recordings. For instance, this webinar is gonna be here, and the recording is gonna be there, so in case you want to open and check some information that you missed. And also you can go by categories, select a topic, for instance, alternatives. We have on alternatives the registration of biopesticides, challenges and opportunities. There was 2021. We have here the recording and also the presentations on PDF. So yes, now we are open to comments or questions. In case you have, and emphasize again, you can explore those tools that are in the PPT I sent to you. Please also explore the website, and if you have doubts, you can contact us. Are there any questions or comments? So you can raise your hand. Okay. Mhm. Checking. Okay. Okay, so it seems that was too much information, but we are gonna change an email. There is one question. Just to clarify, you said the recording will be made available on the website. Yes, it's gonna be available on the website, and also we are gonna send an email to all of you with the recording and the presentation, and also with the credentials to have access to the online submission platform. Okay. I don't see other question or comments, so I will share a short questionnaire with only 3 questions. So I share now on the chat. So this will help us to understand your needs about the Rotterdam Convention implementation in your country and how we can provide further support. And your feedback will also help us to improve the future sessions. So I will give 3 minutes or 5 minutes for the questionnaire. I already sent on the chat box. Okay, so maybe you don't have a lot of time to respond this questionnaire. Also, we are gonna send it by email in case. And here I have another question, and is all FRAs based on risk assessment? Can a country use journal publications or other governmental and organizational publications as a basis of FRA? This question was made by Len Goma. So, Alec, you would like to reply this question? Are all FRAs based on risk assessment?
Yeah, thank you, Gomar, for this question. Whether the action that you're going to take on national level to ban or restrict certain chemicals will be based on risk evaluation or risk assessment. Depends on the country, depends on you, basically. It's up to the country national process and establish national management regulation within the chemicals management system, how you're banning or restricting chemicals, and whether you are carrying out risk evaluation or risk assessment prior deciding to take an action to ban those chemicals. Um, uh, Whether a country can use a journal publication or other intergovernmental or other international organization publications as a basis for final regulatory actions. Yes, that's the case for many countries that are not in a position actually to carry out risk assessment, which is in the capacity usually of the developed countries to carry out such a complex risk assessment prior banning restricting certain chemicals. So you can use basically another international organization publication where risk assessment has been carried out. And in the convention, we have the so-called concept of bridging. You can bridge the information from that particular country or from that publication into your national local conditions of use and carry out so-called risk evaluation and provide a rationale in the notification, which was the basis for your national decision to ban or restrict certain chemical. So yeah, for the first question, you do not really need to base your FRA on risk assessment. We have received many notifications where countries are simply banning or restricting chemicals without carrying out risk or hazard evaluation. The form that Jean-Philippe meticulously showcased you, the online form, has the option to provide the answer yes or no, whether the risk or hazard evaluation was carried out or not. So you can also respond no, and then still the basis or the reason for the final regulatory action is still protection of human health and environment, and that's still within the information requirements of Annex 1. And that still means that the Secretariat will consider this notification of final regulatory action, will verify it as valid, and will publish it in the PIC circular, and will make it part of our databases of FRAs. Of course, if you want to facilitate the process, you can also use risk evaluation or risk assessment carried out by other organizations as a basis for your national action. I hope that this responds to your question, Mr. Len Goma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alec, and also for this amazing question. So thank you so much to all of you. And sorry, there is one other question. If we decide to ban a chemical simply because we are going for a safer alternative, we still notify the secretariat, right?
That's very much correct, Gaia. Basically, whichever action you take at national level to ban or to restrict a chemical, according to the obligations of Article 5, you're obliged to notify the Secretariat about that decision. And having said so, in the form that you're submitting, that was developed by the Secretariat, and the notification form that you would submit as a basis for that final regulatory action, there is an option where you can provide an information on the fact that you're considering replacing or alternating that chemical you're banning with a safe alternative, or alternative to the chemical you have banned. So yes, you still need to notify the Secretariat about your decision. In terms of providing a safer alternative for that chemical in your country. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaia, for your question. So if there is no any more question, thank you so much for joining the webinar, for your time, for all of you that did a lot of effort to join this webinar in Latin America morning, then here in Europe afternoon, then Asia evening, Africa also, same time Europe. So thank you so much. And we are here to support you, and you are gonna receive an email with this information. And yes, I wish you a nice day. Thank you so much.